You know the exact temperature of the room. You've had the argument, you've formally accepted the apology, and you're back at the same dinner table, but you refuse to look at each other. The words have been spoken, but the emotional distance is strictly maintained. We usually accept this compromise. It feels safe. You drop the immediate conflict without having to risk the vulnerability of actually reconnecting. But this state of half forgiveness, this fake frozen peace, is a highly volatile trap. To see how destructive that trap really is, we have to look at the royal court of ancient Israel. King David is paralyzed. His son Absalom has murdered his own half-brother and fled the country in exile. David is stuck between a father's intense longing to see his son and a ruler's crushing obligation to uphold the law. It forces a profound question. What happens when we try to solve a broken relationship by merely changing the geography, without changing the heart? As David is about to learn, partial forgiveness creates a relational vacuum, and that vacuum practically guarantees a deeper, explosive destruction down the road. The impasse is broken by a political manipulation. David's top general, Joab, wants the heir apparent back in the capital. To force the king's hand, Joab hires a highly intelligent woman from a town called Tekoa to perform a bit of theater. She approaches David disguised as a grieving widow. She spins a story about her two sons getting into a fight in a field where one strikes and kills the other. Now she claims the entire extended family wants to execute the surviving son, wiping out her family line. David, moved by the story, issues a royal oath to protect the surviving son from vengeance. The woman drops the mask. She takes David's own legal ruling and holds it up like a mirror to his hypocrisy. She points out the obvious contradiction. He is willing to pardon a stranger's murderous son, but refuses to bring back his own. She anchors her argument in the hard reality of human fragility. She tells the king that we are all dying, like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Death is final. Our time to fix things is brutally short. She contrasts our fragility with God's active nature. She declares that God does not take away life. Instead, he actively devises ways so that a banished person is not permanently cast out. God builds a road home for the exile. It's a brilliant irony. Wrapped entirely inside a cynical human power play, a hired actor accurately articulates the blueprint for divine grace. God's love is an active, pursuing force. David yields to the pressure. He agrees to bring his son back from exile and allows Absalom to return to Jerusalem. It is a strictly geographic pardon. But then David issues a chilling caveat that destroys any hope of a real reunion. He orders that Absalom is allowed inside the city limits, but he is strictly forbidden from seeing the king's face. For 2 entire years, they live in the same city. Absalom is out of exile, yet entirely isolated. Physical proximity, combined with a deliberate cold shoulder, acts like an incubator for bitterness. The resentment festers in the silence. The isolation breaks Absalom. Desperate to force a meeting, he commands his servants to set General Joab's barley fields on fire. The arson works, earning him an audience with his father, but the psychological damage is already permanent. David's attempt at half-forgiveness accelerated his son's moral corruption. By keeping Absalom in the hallway and withholding face-to-face reconciliation, David created a betrayal that eclipsed the original offense, laying the groundwork for Absalom's eventual violent rebellion. This illustrates the flaw in David's approach. On the left, human forgiveness extends the bridge halfway and stops. It's passive, focused on self-preservation. On the right, divine forgiveness refuses the halfway compromise. It satisfies justice while executing total mercy, eliminating the gap entirely. David's refusal to look his guilty son in the eye reveals a defect in human mercy. We can drop the charges, but we often can't stand the sight of the person who hurt us. It creates a deadlock that David couldn't resolve. This is where the story shifts from a failed royal decree to a cosmic necessity. Jesus Christ resolves the exact deadlock that broke David's family. On the cross, he satisfied the legal requirement for justice while simultaneously opening the way for face-to-face restoration. This requires us to take a hard look at our own communities. Whether in your family, in your workplace, or in your church, you have to choose whether you will tolerate the cold violence of superficial peace. Reconciliation requires looking the other person in the eye. It demands the proactive, often painful work of closing the gap and then choosing to walk forward together.